awesome when he comes
He's a
and
good
talks
guy.
to this.
I know when he was like, yeah, I can't make it, and tagged me, and I was like, oh, I got big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I think they'll be looking forward to hear from you though, because he kind of hinted at what you did and didn't really understand it all. Don't tell him I said that.
Right?
But he was really proud of what you did, and that's just part of your role with him, right? Are you helping to build that building downtown?
To an extent.
Are you? Yeah.
I got to play a role in the planning and designing of the new
It's
interior.
amazing.
So,
Because
yeah,
I've
we're
been in that
excited.
building 100 times. I've even been upstairs, and I never knew it was like that.
Yeah, we started crawling around in the rafters after we bought it, and we were like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had no idea.
Yeah.
It looks so cool.
It's going to be incredible.
Yep.
Are we allowed to take those off yet?
I think so. I'll get in trouble when you won't.
Okay.
I had to speak at a funeral a couple of weeks ago,
Oh,
and
man.
it was just like this. Almost the dead.
This is easy. Almost feels like the calm before the storm. Brace yourself.
So we'll know momentarily and then
I can't believe how much this place has changed since I've been here.
Yeah, when were you here?
4 years ago,
Okay. So you just missed
all of this.
being a freshman when we did all this. Okay. Well, cool. Now you're the old timer.
I am. Weird for a change.
Sandra, you went to CSUP, right?
Yeah.
Did you? Okay. What's your degree in?
Construction management and business.
Perfect. I know Lathan was so upset she didn't get to do more things with you.
I know. I caught her, I think the very last week she had her internship with us,
Yeah.
but I took her out flying one day and we had fun. So,
She enjoyed it. She enjoyed it. I'm sure she did that. And now you guys have one of my friends now. It's over there from Warren.
oh, really?
Crystal Wood?
Yes.
Yes. Just hired on?
Yes, she is awesome.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
Is that Alyssa's daughter? It is. Okay. I don't know. I'm sure.
The heck was that? Sounds like my house.
Sound like somebody's being killed? Sound really loud.
But yeah, sometimes the special needs kids are pretty loud. I used to drive bus 10, and it's wild. It's so fun. Stop licking the windows.
That's one advantage to masks.
You should, that first day of school, the little first graders were in their buses. You couldn't even see them, they were below the windows or whatever, their little masks on, they looked scared for, like the first week.
Yeah.
They're just terrified.
Yeah.
Oh my golly.
I can't imagine being that young having to deal with all this.
That's all they know. It's fun watching movies now. You're like, you can't do that. Oh yeah, you can. Or something will be on TV and they'll put little things at the bottom. Recorded in 2019.
Right.
Oh, that's why they're
Yep.
eating chilies and whatever, whatever on TV.
Oh my gosh, they have salt shakers on the table and pepper.
Right.
Everyone gets to use the same one. Where are you at? Pretty amazing.
Oh, maybe she hasn't been.
Let me send you to her. If she's not there, you're going to have her call.
Maybe I was born in.
Okay.
Did you graduate in 2017? 16. So my daughter was here behind you.
English 98, yeah. Okay.
How did they do the construction management classes? Were you like in like Hassan School of Business, right in that
It
building?
was
And
the technology
then you
building.
went to the, okay. So you were doing almost 2 majors.
Yep.
That's huge. And you did that 4 years?
Yeah.
And drove back and forth?
Uh-huh.
And probably had a job?
And
The whole-
worked 2 jobs,
Yeah.
actually.
Oh my goodness.
I was very busy over the last 4 years.
Yep.
It was good, though.
Okay,
It's kind of freaking me out now that I don't have school and I quit my other job. Oh, because I'm like, what are hobbies? People have those.
Yeah, or weekends.
Or weekends, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Find myself a lot of reading.
That first Saturday after college and you have a career, you're like, huh? So I could do anything I
Anything
want?
I want.
Oh, wow.
And not stare at a computer.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we had a little bit of confusion. We were not aware that we have both classes in here just because the numbers are so small. So we are ready to get started. Okay, so cohort B, welcome today. This is your first in-person pathway that we have. So today you will have a presentation from skilled trades, industry, and security. I am going to encourage you to ask a lot of questions. I have some questions, but you probably have a lot better questions than what I could come up with. So we really encourage you to ask questions of our panel. So I am going to turn it over to whoever would like to go first to introduce yourself and tell where you're from. We'll start with that.
Okay, I'm Greg Owen. I work with the Fremont County Sheriff's Office. I am a sergeant on patrol. I've worked for the Sheriff's Office for close to 9 years now. I started there when I was 21. I started in the jail. They sent me to the Post Academy, sent me to the road, and here I am now.
All right. My name's Shane Roberts. I work for the Canyon City Area Fire Protection District. I started as a volunteer in 1996 and actually got hired full-time in 2001, so I've been there just short of 20 years. I'm a lieutenant, and I'm also the public information officer, and this is what we do.
Good morning, guys. My name is Kendra Tezak. I work for Tezak Heavy Equipment as the survey manager and drone pilot. I've been there about 6 years now, and I just finished my college degree to continue my future there.
Hi guys, my name is Michael Giesemann. If you're writing that down, it's M-I-C-H-A-E-L. And you might have heard the name Giesemann here. Does anybody have Matt Giesemann? Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Yes. I also work with Canyon City Schools at the warehouse and transportation. I've been lucky enough to drive a truck full of Brussels sprouts and paper and pens and pencils and stuff for the school district for the last 13 years. And I'd like to talk to you about working as you get a driver's license, as you get skills in moving things, for a career that you can make a good income with low training in transportation and warehousing.
Okay, so we will go ahead and open it up for questions. Anyone want to start with some questions right off the bat for them? All right, go ahead.
When did you figure out that this is what you wanted to do? That this is what you wanted your career to be?
Okay, I'll start. So when I was 21, I just kind of got done with college, and at the time I was actually working at Pizza Hut. A position came open for the jail here, and when you work in the jail here, you don't have to have a post certification, which is what you need to work an actual patrol job. And I started in the jail because honestly, I took a job because it made more money. Within 6 months of working at the jail, I quickly realized that type of environment is something that I was kind of called to do. serving the community, helping people, even helping the inmates in the jail. You got to understand a lot of people that are in jail are just people that had a really bad day. You know, that there's not a lot of bad people out there. There are some bad people, but a lot of people make mistakes. And so I decided to stick with it. And then when I went to patrol, honestly, I can't really see myself doing anything else. I super enjoy my job, even in the times we're in right now. I love doing my job, helping people, and just serving the community, especially doing stuff like this. It's super awesome to meet a lot of people within the community that I serve.
For me, I wasn't one of those kids that grew up wanting to be a firefighter. We have a lot of those people in our company that actually just have fire trucks everywhere all through growing up. Just everything. I lived to be a firefighter. What I did is straight out of school, I worked in the construction trades, and then I went to work at the Department of Corrections. And so working for DOC, actually met some people doing construction type things on the side that actually were firefighters. And so what drew me to the fire service has nothing to do with spraying water in big red trucks, but the people. And it started off with the people that actually work there, because one of the things that to this day that I'm drawn to is you won't find a higher class of people than the fire service, because they're people of integrity, they're people that are hardworking, and we are the kind of people that we absolutely, from the time you get up till the time you go to bed at night, we are, integrity is our thing, and doing the right thing is, even whenever people aren't looking. And so those are the people that I work with. And then once you start hanging out with those people, they talk me into joining the volunteer fire department, and then you get to see what it's like to actually truly have a selfless position and help the community. Because if you think about the fire service and law enforcement and a lot of these things, we only interact with those people whenever they're having a bad day. And so having the opportunity to meet people where they are, and a lot of times for us, the worst day of their life, and being able to have the opportunity to make a positive difference for them is huge. And so I can't think of a more rewarding job than being able to help people, even if it doesn't seem like an emergency to us, it's an emergency to them. And so that's a pretty rewarding thing. So that's what sparked my interest in doing this full time.
I was born and raised in the construction industry, so from a very young age, I had a good taste of it. But it wasn't until I was probably a junior in high school that I had decided this was the way I actually wanted to go. And that was primarily just due to recognizing that the construction industry is here long term, and it's going to be in a high demand position for younger generations to come. And so knowing that I have that good job security for not only today but the rest of my life and my career, it was what pulled me in to go ahead and move forward with it.
I've always had a position to where I felt confident driving. I was able to work at a hardware store as my first job. If you do get a first job soon, it will shape you for the rest of your life, because you get that first experience working. But what I loved to do was take stuff from A to B and make those people happy who paid to get these things. We would move windows and doors and cabinets from one place to the other, and I really liked interacting with the people at that level as far as being useful, and using big equipment is always fun. Forklifts and big trucks and things that are built to go a long time. So I liked that part of the aspect of interacting with people and getting them the things they need and being dependable. I was always, perfect attendance at school. I like to be there. I like to participate. I get there early and stay late, and I found that that's needed in transportation. It's also a very good entry-level job if you're thinking of that. Be very careful about your driving record as a teen driver. Get that experience with adults driving around, and take a look at equipment and see what you might want to drive.
All right. Another question. Go ahead. So Shane, can we start with you this time? We'll kind of mix it up.
Sure. As far as what schooling is required, just as Sergeant Owen talked about the police officer standard of training that they have to have, we have certain requirements that we have to follow also. So we have firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and the state of Colorado has actually recognized certain certification levels that you have to possess in order to do certain functions. And so there's a growing number of people that actually have a college education going into what I do because it's a changing field. A long time ago, it used to be primarily volunteer, and across the United States, there are way more volunteer firefighters than there are career firefighters. And so it's really a competitive field to get into, and so a lot of us have college degrees, and if you want to go anything past a basic firefighter, it almost requires some sort of college education. And so in the education that is important is, I have a degree in fire science, and what I'm working on now is finishing my next degree in business, because the farther up the food chain you go, the more this turns into business management, in addition to emergency scene management. So the very first thing that I would tell you as far as education that you have to be a firefighter is EMT, because a lot of people don't realize that 80% of my job is medical. We respond to every kind of medical emergency imaginable, and so if you have an EMT certification, you can start day one and be productive on 80% of the calls that we go on. So that's an important first step, is probably EMT.
Just go down the line.
The great thing about the construction industry is there's so many different pathways within it that not all of it requires a college degree. Between operators and field personnel to our office management team, a lot of the people I work with didn't go to college. But the thing about it is once you get that college degree, chances are you get to start a little bit higher up in that field personnel or that beginning operator position. But most of what we do in the construction industry is field fit and field training. So yes, although a college degree does help get your foot in the door and get a little bit more book experience under your belt, it's not always required.
I wanted to tell you a story. When I first started working at the hardware store, this was my education. We would get these things in all the time. Does everybody know what this is called? This is about 40 to 50 pounds of wood. And I would have to go out and repair these things, right? Because when they ship things, they break. So this thing, can everybody see the dimensions on there? What's this read right there? 40 inches by 48 inches. This is pretty much a standard throughout the world. This is about 1 meter. And this is 1.2 meters. These fit into those ginormous container ships. These will fit in there just right so that they can quickly be loaded and unloaded. And it's very standard to have these dimensions. And so what my job is to make sure that they were strong enough to hold nails or paint or anything like that, and that they were in good repair. The forklift, can you see where a forklift would go right in there? So the forklift goes in those holes, and it also can go on the sides, on these holes. You can see that. And so my education level was about this level. I was maybe 14, 15 years old, and I went out with a hammer, and I made sure that these would work right. That got me kind of excited, like, okay, well, what do these do? We put like cement on them. We put, like I say, paint and things. And so this is what kind of got me going into this career, is like, how do these get from China to the United States, loaded on something else, and go back? They could have Tyson chicken on this, and it would go back to China. Who knows? But to answer your question about what education level I had, it's on the job. I went to business school and did business classes, and that helped me. But what really got me going into transportation was getting wood pallets fixed, putting them on trucks, getting them where they needed to be, and it builds your resume. You could, I don't know if I've driven 1,000,000 miles, but I wouldn't be surprised. And that's kind of how I got my start in transportation. So I'll leave this if you want to take a look at it. These are the standard throughout the world. Let me throw it down here. Sergeant, you're up, right?
All right, so when you talk about being a sheriff deputy or a police officer, as Shane had mentioned, there are police officer standards of training, which is what POST is. And you have to go to a POST training academy. A lot of colleges do offer POST. Some agencies have their own POST too. And it's about 5 to 6 months basically of schooling. So on top of having, your diploma or your GED, you have to have this POST training as well. And within the POST training, it covers a lot of information. There's between, obviously, we have to be proficient with firearms, defense tactics, and then they talk about report writing, how you speak with people in general, and then the Colorado Revised Statutes, which is what all of our laws are. You have to know, and obviously it's short for Colorado Revised Statutes is CRS. You have to know CRS very well. You have to pass a POST test at the end of the 6 months in order to get your POST certificate to be a police officer. And knowing your CRS is super important because those are your actual crimes. You have to know your elements. So on top of the POST, you have to obviously pass physical requirements, and then whenever you go to an agency, everything else is specific upon that. But it's super important to know, as with any job, as you get into the job, your education and your training just continues from there. We work in positions and jobs that are ever evolving. New laws and stuff come out every day that define how we can do our job and how we should do our job. So we have to constantly go to training and educate ourselves to be the best we can. Because if you don't keep up with it, you're falling behind and you're really doing a disservice to yourself as well as your community.
Okay, thank you. Next question, right here in the red.
What are the salaries like?
You want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So it depends on what kind of pathway you take in the construction industry. Basic labor in the county, like Fremont County area, could easily make $30,000 a year, if not more. And that could go all the way up to our upper management salaries, which range about $60,000 to $100,000 a year. But typically those upper management positions require a college degree, whereas our labor and operator positions actually are more of the on the field, in the job training.
Top wages for drivers, like tractor trailer drivers who work a lot of hours, is between $70,000 and $90,000. It sounds like a lot, but you give up a lot as well as far as your weekends. It takes a toll on your body throughout your career, and so you can only really do that pace for about 20 years if you're really, really lucky. But to get into a job like that, it's always above minimum wage, always, because it's an in-demand skill set, and it's very needed, and you have to have a license and experience to do it. So it's always going to be above minimum wage, even for an entry-level person at 16, 17 years old.
So when it comes to law enforcement, it really depends kind of on what agency you're going to go with, because there is a lot of variation in pay. And that determines a lot to agency size and the jurisdiction size and stuff like that. But here, typically coming in, starting on patrol, you can start anywhere around 40 to 42,000 a year. And typically you can get a raise every year. Once you start moving up in your promoting, going to corporal, sergeant, stuff like that, you can start making around $60K a year. And if you're in the jail and you don't have your post certification, you start about $35,000, $37,000 a year.
to kind of speak to what Sergeant Owen said, it depends a lot on where you work. So one of the things that I just want to make sure everybody understands is that, you know, if you go to the Denver area, there's a large fire department that's South Metro. And I just looked at their stuff up last night anticipating this to see what they make. And so they make more than we do here, but you have to look at the cost of living. So just looking at a number as you're looking at career fields, it depends a lot on where you are, because if you can, you know, live in Parker and say that you make $80,000 a year, might not equate to what $80,000 a year looks like here. And so that's something to consider as you're deciding where you want to go. But I looked up our pay scale. Our brand new firefighters, year one, make about $50,000 a year. And so we vary from the first guy to the chief, anywhere from 50 to in the 120s. And so depending on how long you've been there, you can actually make a very comfortable living doing what we do. And that's here in Canyon City.
Okay, thank you. We had another question?
How has COVID affected daily stuff? Is it like easy to adapt to it?
It took some time for us. We would have drivers show up and not get out of their trucks. Like, we were like, hello, come on, back up. And they would get out of their trucks, and I don't blame them. And we have paperwork that we sign when we receive a delivery in, and that went away right away. Good question about how COVID changed how we do things. Drivers were very responsible. Drivers that came into our warehouse, they were from Denver or from Grand Junction or whatever, they did adopt masks way before the mandate. I think their companies were trying to protect everyone, and they wore masks way before we did, I would say. And because they are a vector for disease, they travel a lot and stuff, they don't want to plant disease everywhere they go. So they were under strict orders to keep distance, wear masks, and not have us touch paperwork.
For us, honestly, it was kind of a pretty easy adaptation. Really, it was the mask for us. Dispatch will ask if somebody calls in if they've been having symptoms or something, but we're already pretty strict about people wearing their PPE or their personal protective equipment when they go to calls anyway. So when COVID came out and hit as hard as it did, everybody was kind of already used to that kind of stuff, and we don't really have a choice. We have to go to the call anyway. So it's just making sure that everybody's, you know, keeping their masks on, keeping themselves clean if they have to touch anything and stuff like that. It did affect some of the stuff that we do. Courts, you know, can order evictions, obviously. Those stopped for a while. Some of the more civil stuff was not going on, but has recently kicked back up. So we kind of got to get the guys used to doing that stuff again. But nothing really changed too bad for us other than make sure we wear a mask.
I would guess of the four people up here, COVID probably affected our line of work more severely than the rest just because of the nature of what we do. So like I said, 80% of what we do is medical related. So if we have somebody that has COVID-19 symptoms and they're at their house, they may have fallen and they might be in a small bathroom. So we still have to go and be in very confined places with those people regardless of what their issue is, because we are their first line of defense and the first line of getting them help. So some of the things that were hard for us initially is the changing information. So just like you have all experienced, you hear this works one day, then it's something else. And so in the beginning, that was really difficult for us because we have a very intimate job. We have a very hands-on job with the public. And so we take vital signs, we perform medical procedures, we start IVs, we push medications, we do a lot of those things. And so in the beginning, it was really tough for us because we're so accustomed to being up close and personal. So trying to keep social distancing, trying to still do what we do and not be as in close to our patients was difficult. One of the things that was really odd for us is, and I'm sure we'll talk about schedules later, is we actually work a 24-hour day. So I go to work at 7 in the morning and I get off at 7 o'clock the next morning. And so I'm with the same group of people literally 24 hours a day. We have a dormitory that if call volume allows us, we actually sleep there. We cook our meals there. We work out there. We do all these things together. And so having to try to keep everybody distant there, we couldn't all sit at the kitchen table and eat lunch together because it was too close. So we had to eat in shifts. We had to keep people distant. You had to wear a mask inside basically what is our house, because we call it the firehouse, but I literally live a third of my life in the firehouse. One of the strangest things is our families were not allowed to come in the firehouse. The general public was not allowed to come in the firehouse. And so for something that we spend so much time, there was really interesting trying to navigate how do you keep people safe, because the last thing in the world we wanted was for one of us to contract that unknowingly, and then through the course of our job, going from home to home to home, give that to other people. So our personal protective equipment, like Sergeant Owen said, was amazing, and it still is to this day. So the really crazy thing is at the very beginning, there were a lot of things that we weren't allowed to do. So we can basically bring the first 15 minutes of the emergency room to your house. If you go in there, if you're having chest pain, if you're having a heart attack, whatever, we can do the same things in your living room that they can in the emergency room. But if somebody, if you passed out, your heart stopped beating, whatever, it really limited what we were allowed to do just because of COVID-19. So our rules and our restrictions have eased since then, and we're allowed to do more things, but it actually had a pretty significant impact on what we're allowed to do.
COVID didn't change the construction industry as much as some of our other industry members up here today. It changed it more so for our office personnel, just from the aspect of being in an office space, you are in that enclosed, confined space with other people. Much like you guys are doing with the online learning, we also brought that to our workplace. So we had people working remotely from home as often as they could. But from a field personnel standpoint, when we have people on the job sites, you have individuals in their own piece of equipment every day. You have laborers on foot on the fields, socially distanced. So from an office standpoint, it definitely did impact us, but from a field standpoint, not as much.
Okay, next question. Down there.
What is the skill, what are the skills that you do? What skill are you
What skills are most important? There's a lot, definitely. Communication's going to be probably your number one skill, and especially in law enforcement, because we deal with a lot of people. When we're dealing with them, most of the time it's on they're having a really bad day, or it could be the worst day of their lives, and they could be having some mental breakdowns. You have to be able to talk to people and empathize with people, or else you probably wouldn't go very far in this job. Some other important skills, I mean, communication's definitely big. Report writing's really huge. Being able to write coherent reports that you can stand by when you go to court and you have to testify. There's nothing worse than going to court and feeling like a dummy on the stand because they're pointing out a flaw or something in your report. So report writing's super huge. But I mean, there's just definitely it's just a lot of people skills that come with this job that you need. Communication being a big one.
I agree with ours also. Communication is huge, because what we do is we interact with people, and you interact with total strangers. I would say probably one of the paramount things that you need to be able to do in my job is critical thinking. So critical thinking simply means that you're good under pressure, you're able to make good decisions and stay calm, because in a couple of the jobs represented here, if somebody calls 911, they have a problem that has went beyond what they're able to control or manage. So they need something from somebody to help whatever their problem is, whether that's a law enforcement issue, a fire issue, a medical issue. They need animal control, they need whatever. They have called 911 because they need some help. So whenever we arrive, we always have to keep in the back of our mind that if we lose control and we can't think and we can't make good decisions and try to affect the outcome of their position, wherever they're at, who else do you call? Because you called 911, there's nobody else. So critical thinking is absolutely paramount, that you can stay calm. And even if you're not calm inside, the best way that I've heard it described is almost like a duck swimming in the water. From the top side, it looks like everything's great, and you might be paddling like crazy underneath. But keeping calm, making good decisions is critical.
Much like everyone else said, I would say written and verbal communication is a very large part of any career path you go on. But another very large skill that we see in the construction industry would be time management. As far as showing up on time, doing your tasks in a timely manner. That's just something that it's been instilled in this industry, and not a lot of the younger generation have been able to keep up with it. So time management.
Good, I would echo that with transportation jobs. To be dependable, you wouldn't drive a truck if it only worked 4 days a week out of 5. You'd be like, come on. So you almost need to be as dependable as the machines you work with, maybe more dependable, and to have your career be as important as your outside of your career life. Line up everything so that you've got the support system so that you can show up to work. Above staying, healthy and it's a physical job, so you need to be well, eat well, and take care of your body. And so one of the most important things is being dependable, always being able to perform, and having a plan.
Next question. Go ahead.
I didn't catch the last part of that.
Pros and cons.
That like are really big for your
Pros and cons. We'll start with the positives. There are not a huge number of professions out there that carry the prestige that mine does. There's a lot asked of us, but then there's a lot of things that are just assumed. So if you stop and think about, if you call 911, what do you expect that person to be that walks through the door? You expect them to be prompt. You expect them to be professional. You expect them to be able to do whatever their field of responsibility is. You expect them to just be that person that takes care of your situation. And so with that comes there's no better way to describe it other than some prestige, and it's an honorable thing to do. We get to help people in their time of need. We get to have some very rewarding things. The negative side of it is it wears on you after a while, because we also, in the good things, we see a lot of bad things. We see a lot of people in their worst time. We see a lot of things that they've done to each other that are hard on each other. Sleep is a precious commodity where I work. So the other crazy thing is the schedule that we work with, a rotating schedule. I don't have the same days off 2 weeks in a row ever. So I've missed a lot of birthdays. I've missed a lot of Christmases. I've missed a lot of family things for the sake of my profession and for the sake of having somebody being in the firehouse on Christmas morning in case you need us. So that's a negative thing. One of the things is the day and time that we live in right now. It's kind of strange to have so many people, and law enforcement has it way worse. For some reason, people are looking for somebody to be the villain. And instead of looking within and making yourself better and holding your friends and your family accountable, they're looking at other people to blame their problems on. And so, unfortunately, a lot of us stand side by side. A lot of different professions, a lot of people that go to work every day are being victimized for absolutely no reason. So they're the people that, you may work in a store, you may work wherever, and just because people are acting out right now, then your family is affected by that. Your profession is affected by that. Your friends are affected by that. And so it's a really tough time for a lot of people in America right now, and it comes down to personal responsibility, in my opinion. And so for the fire service, whenever you see people rioting, whenever you see people doing all these things, you hear people hurt, those people still have to be helped. So we still go do those things whenever people are acting up and they're doing ugly things. People still have to care for them. And so the downside of that is come rain or shine, people still need help, people still need things, and so we don't have the ability to choose how people act and how they conduct their business, but we're still going to be there to help them, even if they don't want us, even if they don't like us. Sometimes If they don't like the law enforcement, those are our brothers and our sisters, and we're going to stand side by side with them. And so the negative thing is you don't always get to choose, hey, this sounds like a fun call, this sounds happy. We go to whatever we're called to.
All right, from a construction standpoint, I would start with the pros. Like I had mentioned, there's many different career paths you can take within the construction industry, whether it be horizontal construction or vertical construction, meaning either roadways, bridges, riverways, or houses, vertical buildings. But not only that, you have different opportunities within each of those sectors as well, being office work, field work, operator. So if you join and you decide you don't like what you're doing in that moment, you have opportunities for growth still within that same industry. From a con standpoint, I would have to say it's really hard on the schedule sometimes, especially in the summer months when our schedules are crunched for time. It calls for really early mornings and really late nights sometimes, but it's worth it in the long run to meet those scheduling deadlines.
One of the best things about having a job, either in construction or outside, is you get to have the satisfaction of driving by that someday and looking at it and saying, wow, we did that. I remember it took forever, but we did it. It's great for me to be part of those projects. We just put together 2 new schools in our school district, the Washington School and Canyon City Middle School. And that's a long process, but it's continual, and they kept going, and now there's children in those buildings because they had the commitment to keep it going. That's one of the satisfying things to do with what I do. I had to sneak around inside this door 1 hour, and that door another hour, to get things to the same place within a building. And to take that planning and work together and use communication, it's very satisfying to have a huge challenge and to meet it. And no one's perfect, but that's what we aim for. And if you can be part of a big project like that and know your place and know your role, it feels so good. It's great. And you're like, wow, I get paid to do this. And if you can find something like that at your age that really lights a fire under you when you hear these groups come in, like us or another group, pull one of us aside and say, hey, what you said, I want to do that. What's the first step to do that? We do talk about the cons. I mentioned taking care of our bodies so that we can do the work. You've ever seen a pot-bellied truck driver, they've been on the road and they stop at every truck stop and eat fried everything, and they make some really bad choices. But unfortunately, that is out there. But what I see a lot of drivers, young and old, who are taking care of their bodies and making safe choices with their health and their driving, and that can be a long, enjoyable career. So I hope we've answered some of those questions about pros and cons of what we do. Any follow-ups to that question?
I think we have one more pros and cons.
Yes, I know.
Okay, so my pros and cons, a lot of it is pretty much going to resemble what Lieutenant over here said. There's obviously a lot of pros in what we do. It's a very rewarding career if you put the work in. Being able to help somebody else, being able to help your fellow mankind, it really is amazing. You come to these people when they're in dire need of some kind of intervention, and it can be something, honestly, where you guys would think it's not a big deal, where we don't think it's a big deal. Somebody calls us, and this is a true story, because their neighbor's sprinkler is watering part of their lawn, and they are up in arms about it. Now, yeah, that can be something that could be annoying. You could take it that way, or you could take it as a chance to help 2 neighbors to actually squash anything that they have going on and have a better relationship. Even when it comes to stuff like that, there's a lot that you can help people do and to just live with each other better and hopefully, start making the world in general a better place. The cons, I mean, right now it's just tough. I can't get on to Facebook right now without reading anything negative or derogatory towards my profession right now, which, you know, and it goes, people say it all the time, you know, not all cops are bad. Of course they're not. Most of them, the vast majority of them are out there to help and do whatever they possibly can. It does wear on you, and the other thing is just the stuff that we have to see. You know, if we go to a homicide, somebody has just been murdered, we don't kind of get to look at it through the eyes of a normal person. We have to kind of look at it as a puzzle and how we solve it, because we have to give that victim justice and the family justice. And so it kind of, it makes it difficult, I guess, to relate to people outside of law enforcement. This is why you see a lot of cops hang out with cops, be friends with cops, because, you know, they're kind of building walls. And it's important to try and recognize that and make sure that you break the walls down and step out of your comfort zone and stuff like that. But I would say that the pros outweigh the cons, and that's why I continue to do this.
Okay, go ahead.
Is there any physical requirements or like physical tests or anything?
I'd say DOT regulates health. They do a really fun test you can do. Stand behind somebody and say, "Today's Tuesday." And I don't know why they always say Tuesday at DOT, but they do. And if you can hear that, you can drive a truck. Yeah. They also, some drivers have high blood pressure and they have to test on often. There's also random tests for substances. If you drive a school bus or if you drive anything that over 26,000 pounds, you can have a random test at any time. So it's very important to take care of your body and stay away from things that are harmful to you. Other than that, it's just regular DOT physical and keeping your body in shape for the demanding job.
When it comes to law enforcement, so when I was speaking about the Post Academy earlier, there is a physical requirement you have to do to pass the Post Academy. You have to be able to run 1.5 miles in 16 minutes. You have to do, I don't remember the amount of push-ups and sit-ups you have to do, and you only have a minute to do them. And then you have to be able to run a 300-meter sprint in 55 seconds. That's to pass the Post Academy to get your post cert. Now, when you go to your agency, different agencies have different requirements. Our agency, there is a physical test. I don't remember the physical test. It was 9 years ago that I took it. But also, when you get hired on our agency, I'm actually in charge of the defense tactics portion at the agency. Our defense tactics class is probably more rough than anything they did in the Post Academy. It's designed to make you tired, get your tank on empty, to show that you can continue while your tank is on empty. People hate it, but they also love it at the same time. Like, we get great reviews, but also people won't invite me over, you know, for Christmas dinner. So and then that's something that shows a lot of people whether they can do that or not. And but physical, like test requirement wise, yeah, each agency is going to have their own thing, but the Post Academy does have a set standard.
For our position, in order to get hired, we have a physical agility test that requires you to come to the top of our ladder truck and back. And then there's a variety of stations where you drag hose, you drag a 180-pound dummy, you climb ladders, you do just basically they're things that we do in our normal job. And the crazy thing about ours is you have to take it whenever you get hired, and then we do that once a year. And so whether you're a brand new firefighter or if you're the battalion chief that's been there, we have a battalion chief that's been there for 43 years. And so he has to do the same test that the brand new guys do every year, just because even though his position is different and it's more of a command position, you never know whenever the other guys might be out on a call for service and there's only 2 of you left in the house, and now you're expected to step up and be able to perform the same tasks that the junior people are also. So we do that once a year.
It varies for us per position. So pretty company standard wide, we have to put a minimum of a 50-pound weight limit that you can lift pretty much across any position. Much like Geisman said, if you're a driver, you have to pass DOT physicals and also substance free. So, other than that, that's basically the requirements we do in the construction industry.
Okay, we had another question.
Can I say one other thing real quick? Because Kendra hit something that's really important as far as being substance-free. Even though we live in Colorado and a lot of things are legal, there's a lot of professions out there that you guys need to understand that still do not allow you to partake in the marijuana of any form. And so we are certainly one of them. I know law enforcement agencies are the same, and I don't know what different agencies' rules are, but she hit on a really critical point that just because it's legal, recreational marijuana is legal, doesn't mean that everywhere you work allows that. So, and we are certainly one that does not allow any form of recreational marijuana at all.
Go ahead.
I don't know how much I can divulge it, but I mean, I've obviously seen a lot of crazy stuff. I don't know. Let me think about what I can actually say, and I'll get back to you.
I was hoping you'd take more time because I'm in the same boat. I've seen some crazy things. I've seen a number of times whenever people thought that they were being inventive and showing some ingenuity and trying to solve a problem and really weren't. I guess one that comes to mind is we had a guy that was trying to fix the top of his flagpole, and so he actually had a tractor with a bucket on the front, so he pulled it next to the flagpole and raised the bucket up and then put a ladder on top of that and then buckets on top of the ladder, and to no surprise fell off. And so I mean, we've seen a lot of things that make you say, wow, what made you think that was a good idea? So we'll think as far as the craziest thing that we've seen a lot.
As far as construction industry, a lot of the crazy things you guys might think is crazy is not as crazy to us. A lot of our issues come from safety standpoints. So a lot of some of the crazy things we've seen include just breaking our safety regulations that we have in place, where it's kind of going back to Shane Roberts' comment on what in your mind made that a good idea to do, like putting ladders on top of roofs, or another one we had was we're working in the Cripple Creek and Victor gold mine right now, and we had one of our laborers walking up the haul road with big mining equipment. So it might not seem as wild and crazy to you guys, but from our standpoint and a safety standpoint, it makes you wonder what goes through people's minds.
I don't have any stories. I'm sorry.
So I guess crazy, there's been a lot of really crazy things. I would say, I don't know, it's probably not the craziest thing I've seen. I will say that like a Friday or Saturday night, it would be considered normal to us to see somebody just walking completely naked down the street at 2 in the morning. One crazy thing actually that was super crazy, I think this was probably like 3 years ago. It was when we were getting all these heavy rains and it was up Phantom Canyon. There was this car, and you may not have known it because normally water doesn't run there, but next to the road in Phantom Canyon is an area where like a river used to run. A car parked there to go do something, and within 30 minutes, the biggest flash flood I've ever seen like in my life in person happened. And that person was legitimately stranded in the middle of this flash flood. It was a river that was bringing down the biggest trees and just boulders you can hear rolling underneath. They're stuck in the middle of this, and there's no way for us to get to them. It was actually, I believe it was Florence Fire that came out, and they did what they call a swift water rescue. And he had his dog with him too, the person did. And they took their ladder and they put it all the way out over this river. And I believe it was the Florence police chief at the time that crawled out on his hands and knees. And they picked the dog up by the leash. And it was kind of funny just to see the dog just dangling there over the river for a minute. Saved the dog, and then they picked the person up. But it was just super crazy to me to see how fast something like that can happen, and the sheer just force behind just water, like rapid flowing water is crazy. That was like, that actually made international news. That was pretty crazy how that happened. But other than that, I mean, we've seen, you know, unfortunately we go to a lot of deaths, and some are self-inflicted, and so we've seen some kind of crazy stuff there that you won't forget.
Questions? Can you guys share what a typical day looks like for you? From when you get to work till when you get home?
Sure. Yeah, I could do that. This morning I was on the highway between here and Pueblo at 3 o'clock this morning because I have an early day, and I looked over on the side of the road and I saw one little red light on the side. I thought, oh, somebody's riding their motorcycle at 3 in the morning. Super. So I kind of moved over. There were two dudes on this bike. And I thought, why are they like doing the Lloyd and whatever Dumb and Dumber move like this? But they were working on the bike, and sure enough, a minute later, they're right behind me, and they were going about 75 on that bike, just two big old dudes. So sometimes I do get to see neat stuff on the way to work, but I see deer and elk and antelope and pronghorn and all that. So I have to be really careful on the way to work. It's kind of my most dangerous part of the day is just driving to work, and that's probably true for a lot of us, is how dangerous it is to get in a car. So I have to make sure that I'm very alert in the morning, and I get to work. I work a lot, particularly now by myself, because we don't want to be in close contact with the coworkers. So I could be in the top level of 20 feet high of a freezer at 3:45 in the morning, getting ready to bring food to the high school. And so there's no one to bail me out if I make a mistake. So those early hours are a little dangerous to be by myself in a freezer on a forklift, but I make sure not to put the ladder and the bucket and all that. We have a little safety cage. So typically I'll start very early, and one of the pros is during the day I work at my own pace, which is as fast as I possibly can because it's fun. And I'm finished by 2 o'clock, and I can drive to Pueblo West and pick up my children for school. So as long as I start early enough, I can also spend that equal amount of time with my family. So day to day, I know a day ahead what's going to happen. You don't know that in construction. You don't know that in law enforcement or fire. But I'm very blessed to know that I can set my schedule, and I know that I'm probably going to finish at X amount of time, and I know what's going to happen during the day. So I'm probably the only one up here who can do that. However, I would trade the higher income that they have for that. And so that's something you'll have to think about, is if you're a routine person, or if you like being excited by just like, I don't know what's going to happen today when I put my seatbelt on.
So a typical day for me, I work day shift. So I'm getting up, I'm calling on duty, usually by 5:50 in the morning. We work 12s, so I don't get off until 6. So I call on, obviously I drive to work. As soon as I come on, I'm already engaged and ready for calls for service. The difference being is I'm a sergeant, so I'm actually in charge of my shift. So most of the time I don't get like your regular routine calls, like any thefts that would occur, anything like that. All the deputies are going to dispatch to that. Anything bigger that occurs, obviously I'm going to go with the deputy to that scene, because if it's going to require more, if it's going to require big decision making, then obviously the liability falls on me, so I have to make those decisions. A lot of my day I am spent doing supervisory stuff, whether it's, I like to look over what shift did last week. You know, everybody needs to be praised for the good stuff they do, so you know, if there's anything bad, obviously we'll have some coaching sessions, but any praising, I want to make sure they get to. I also have to read every one of their reports and approve them, so a lot of my day is spent approving reports. which I'm not a huge fan of because it's reading. It's just a lot of reading, but and it can make your day go by slow. But when the days are chaotic, obviously the days do go by quicker. You never actually know if you're going to get off at 6 that day or not. A lot of times 12-hour shifts are actually 14-hour shifts. You know, when it comes time to get off, I head home, hopefully in time to see my kiddos before they go to bed, and that's pretty much the day for me.
Like I said, in the fire service, we work 24-hour days, and so I go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, and the very first thing that we do every day is we check our equipment to make sure it's good to go. So we check all of our medical bags. We check to make sure that our air pack in our seat of the fire engine is in good shape, and that's absolute number one priority. We get our gear out and put it on whichever apparatus we're assigned to for the day. During the COVID-19 thing, we do the same thing that you guys do here. We have to do temperature screenings every morning, and there's a little sheet that we fill out. Do we have body aches? Do we have any of those other things? And as the company officer, it's my responsibility to make sure that the officers or the firefighters in my house have done that as well. And what's a little different than some jobs is we still have a lot of other things to do. So we do company level inspections. We try to look at every business in our district at least once a year. We walk through the door of their business and say, how are you? What's happening? We go on calls for service. Canyon City, we had last year somewhere around 3,800 calls for service for the fire district between 2 firehouses, and that's a pretty busy call volume for a fire service. One of the crazy things that we have to do is every single time we go out the door, we have to write a report. And so, as Sergeant Owen alluded to, it's kind of a bummer for us because you might go on call that's a very simple, it's a lift assist, it's something that somebody drove by and saw this looks like a car accident, but whenever we get there, it's no injuries and nothing leaking, and so it's just simply check and go. But then we've got a 30-minute report to do after that, so that's one of the things with us. So as everybody does the reports, I have to read our shift's reports and do that also. One of the things, since we've spent so much time together, is we actually have some recreation time. So as far as with us, we actually have business hours between 8 to 5 that we actually are up and moving, doing things, conducting the business of the fire district. Because we have 35 paid employees and as many as 25 volunteers. We have a $5 million budget. There's a lot of moving parts to where I work. And so even though I'm an online firefighter, is my first responsibility, we do a lot of other things also. So I'm the public information officer, so the things that you see on Facebook that come out from the Canyon City Fire District, I put that out, and the things that you see in the newspaper and all those things are things I do in addition to going on calls. So in the evening, we have downtime if the call volume allows. So we have what we call a day room. So if you go into our fire station, we have something that resembles a living room. So we have recliners, we have refrigerators, we have a kitchen, then we have a dormitory that has beds. And so a lot of times we cook together, but not always. We have some people that have different diets or they're just finicky eaters, so they choose to not cook with the group. But the one thing that we do every weekend, if you end up working on a Saturday or Sunday, the entire shift cooks breakfast together. And so if you come into the fire station between 8 and 10 o'clock in the morning, chances are something is being cooked as a group. So that's one thing that's different with our job than a lot is we actually prepare meals. We do different hobby things. You know, in the evening, some of the guys, they tie flies in their downtime. A lot of people study because we have a lot of other things going on. And then the really strange thing is our schedule, because I work a day, then I'm off a day. I work a day, off a day, work a day, I'm off 4. So you can make that sound crazy to whoever you're trying to impress. You make it sound like the best thing in the world. So if that's who you're trying to tell them, I only work 10 days a month, but they're 24-hour days. But you also look at it, I work the equivalent of 8 hours a day, 365 days a year, because the entire calendar is divided exactly in thirds, and so my shift is responsible for a third of the 24-hour a day clock. And so that's kind of what our day is. And like we talked, Mr. Eastman said that, he has a very routine schedule, and that's honestly something that as I decide, in retirement years or if I want to do something else, his job is exactly what I'm looking for. Because honestly, to be able to have something scheduled, to be able to have something that is you can plan on in advance is appealing to somebody that's been at this since 1996. because routine and knowing exactly when you're going to get off is something that I don't have right now. So he's 100% right as far as there's trade-offs for everything that you do. So right now we're still in the whole adrenaline junkie. We like the lights and sirens. It's a blast to drive the big red truck. But someday I absolutely will have a job or a future that involves routine. And that sounds awesome to me.
All right, so my typical day, I normally on the clock by about 5 a.m. Typically work 10 to 12 hours a day depending on what I have going on that day. It's absolutely correct, and I try to schedule it, but it doesn't always go as planned. Sometimes you have people calling you saying, I need you here, I need you there, and you drop what you had planned to go and meet other people's needs. But I'm the drone pilot for TZAC Heavy Equipment, so a lot of my time is spent driving between job sites and actually flying and doing job documentation. So typically the first hour to 2 hours in my morning, I'm driving to our first job site. I get set up, I send my drone up in the air, and then I'm doing photo and video documentation as well as progress surveying. Once I get done with that first job site, I tear it down, I check in with my superintendent, make sure everything's covered, start uploading my data to process it, to get those images back, and then I'm on the road again to my next job site. So yes, there's a lot of windshield time. It makes great additional time to listen to podcasts and music, but drive time does get very tiring after a while. But depending on how many jobs we have going on at a time and what other people's needs are, will depend on what time I get home by the end of the day.
Do we have any follow-up question? Oh, I guess class is done. So let's take a minute, please, and give them a round of applause for coming out and meeting with us. Great job. All right, thank you.